You ever have one of those mornings where you know right away it's about to go sideways? Yeah, that was me, standing on my porch in my threadbare sweats, coffee half warm, staring down the vice president of the HOA, Regina Paulcraftoft, while she eyed my wife like Yvain's hospital gown was some kind of biological hazard. That gown needs to go, she barked, squinting at my wife's chest like she was searching for mold, not a heartbeat. Her arms were crossed, clipboard hugged tight like a shield, polyester slacks pressed so sharp you'd think she was prepping for a Senate hearing. Regina's badge caught the sun, Vice President, Elder Hollow Trace HOA, and she wore it like a deputy star in an old Western. My wife didn't flinch. She just hugged her blanket tighter, white-knuckled, settling deeper into the custom recliner I'd built to help her sit through the pain. She's in violation of Clause 8.3b, Regina droned, tilting her head as if she actually cared. You signed the packet. Outdoor recovery attire must be neighborhood appropriate. I tried not to let my voice shake. You didn't file that clause with the registrar. It doesn't exist. She almost smiled, this icy, condescending smile you'd give a child for believing in monsters under the bed. Let me pause for a sec. If you live in an HOA, or you've ever watched someone twist a bylaw just to humiliate a sick woman in her own home, you know the drill. You want to see how this ends? Stick around. I'm Dr. Lenrick Vale. I've spent years testifying in ADA lawsuits, documenting trauma in places most people never want to see. I don't scream, I don't beg, but if you push my wife when she's still recovering from spinal reconstruction, I will end your board position with nothing but paperwork and your own words. Regina had just given me both. Now, this chair, this wasn't just a hunk of wood. It was the last thing I finished before Yvain's surgery, the first thing she touched when she got home. She couldn't sit upright in most furniture, so I built it myself so she could rest, breathe, get her meds without having to fight her own body. That porch, that's the only spot she could even taste fresh air, and she had every legal right to sit there, gown, wounds, bandages and all. Regina knew that, but all she saw was something sick on display, wrecking the perfect front lawn scenery. Yvain shifted, blanket slipped just enough to show the tie of her gown, and Regina sked, raising her phone. I'll need to document this for the compliance report. I stepped between them, my voice dropping. You'll stop, or I'll do what I do best. And what's that? She sneered. I tapped my temple. Build medical cases around humiliation and retaliation. That's what this is. I've got witnesses. Across the street, Jasper Choi angled his phone just enough to catch it all. Subtle, but there. Regina's lips twitched. She lowered her phone. You're intimidating a board officer. That's a violation, too. No, that's me reminding you I know exactly where this is going. And I did. 3 years back, I'd mentored a nursing student named Marin Joss, now the HOA's legal secretary. She didn't say a word, but the way she looked away at meetings, it told me plenty. Regina turned, heels crunching gravel, spitting out, expect a fine. Daily, if necessary. She stalked away, probably thinking she'd already won, but I'd read the filings. Clause 8.3b never passed a member vote, never filed with the county. I'd checked twice. Back inside. Yvain's hands trembled, not out of fear. She was just fighting tears. She's not going to make us hide, she whispered. No, I promised. She's going to make herself famous. The initials I'd carved into the chair, YV plus LV, were still there, unfinished, just like us, but ours. That porch was supposed to be for healing. Instead, it became a stage. The letter came folded like a junk flyer. Notice of community violation. $100 a day for being medically suggestive. The phrase stank of shame. Elder Hollow Trace's rulebook was 83 pages long. Never once mentions disability. 5 clauses about mailbox styles, 2 for porch plant colors. Now one about what a recovering woman can wear in daylight. I checked the HOA portal. There it was, 8.3b. All residents and guests occupying visible front-facing space must maintain neighborhood standard attire reflecting community health and harmony. Weaponized vagueness. At the bottom, some coward had scribbled, please respect the community's visual standards. We are a neighborhood, not a rehabilitation center. No signature. I'd watched people die with more dignity than that letter gave my wife. By mid-morning, wind scattered leaves like they didn't want to touch our porch. I watched Evane step out, settling into her chair, sighing relief just to be outside. Down the block, Regina and another neighbor, Estelle, stood and watched. Estelle's phone peeked out. Filming or faking it didn't matter. They're watching, I muttered, sitting beside Evane. I know, she whispered. Let them. When the blanket slipped again, exposing nothing but a hospital gown tie, I saw it. Vulnerability wasn't allowed here. The next day brought another notice, this time with blurry photos, my wife, the chair, a timestamp. Now she was a case file. At the board meeting, Regina motioned to formalize a new rule. No visible medical equipment on porches unless fully enclosed. She joked about 4 poles being the new bird feeders. Marin didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. Something in her changed. Afterward, I caught Marin. You knew Evane? I asked. She was kind. Marin said, quick and quiet. Regina brushed past, perfume sharp as bleach. Marin didn't walk away. She just watched Evane, and me, and then the floor. The next morning, an urgent advisory slid under our door. Resident attendance, mandatory. HOA meetings can't demand attendance. It was intimidation, dressed up in block font. Evane was asleep, pain worse than ever. I dressed for battle, grabbed the evidence, headed to the annex. No refreshments this time, just cold folding chairs and a laminated rulebook. Regina flanked by 2 board members, Marin off to the side. Dr. Vale. She greeted me. We appreciate your timely arrival. I'm not here for your appreciation. I shot back. She started the meeting, full of empty words, aesthetic harmony, unified frontage, culture, and then, the kicker, porch use suspension for repeat offenders. Under what authority? I challenged. She quoted unratified clauses. I pushed, that's not legal. 8.3b was never ratified or filed. Silence. Marin gripped her clipboard until it creaked. Afterwards, I asked Marin privately, did that clause ever pass a vote? She swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. Proposed. Not ratified. Regina pushed it through in a board-only meeting. No notice, no filing. She didn't vote. She was new, thought it was temporary. It wasn't temporary for my wife. Her face softened. She helped me, back in nursing school. She gave me a place to sit when I was about to pass out during a trauma round. She remembers, I said. Marin handed me a meeting tomorrow, parking lot. Behind the library, no cameras. The next evening, Marin met me in the shadows of the library lot. She handed me a folded sheet, handwritten, not typed, notes from that secret meeting. Regina's handwriting, sharp and slanted, underlined. 8.3b, visible recovery gear not permitted. Impacts image. Marin's voice shook. It stayed because of the pandemic. Never filed, never voted. I didn't thank her, not out loud. She'd risked everything. Back at the hospital, I combed through records, built a timeline showing 8.3b didn't legally exist. I called Mira, an ADA attorney. She confirmed, no member vote, no registrar file, no enforcement power. If a clause targeted medical recovery, it flirted with discrimination. Mira said, you get me the original draft and proof. I'll make sure this hits the right inboxes. That night, Evane was on the porch, blanket like a cape, proud. You're late, she smiled. I'm getting closer. She squeezed my hand. They want this. Gone, she said. They'll fail, I promised. 2 days later, a thick letter arrived. Emergency Governance Provision 11.4. Supposedly gave the board discretionary power during community distress. Not a fine, a declaration of war. 48 hours to remove non-conforming porch furniture. That meant her chair. Back to the county office. This time, I dug for physical filings. Nothing on record. The digital archive was empty too. I checked the HOA member portal. There was the clause, but the vote record gave an error. No vote, no authority. Screenshots, evidence, all of it went to Mira. That night, I sat in the recliner next to Evane, watching her breathe, memorizing the sound of the wood. Morning brought Regina's white SUV, idling at the curb. She didn't get out. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, and stared right back. 10 minutes later, the HOA portal locked us out. They're scared, Evane said. No, I corrected. They're desperate. Mira sent the draft complaint. A 14-page formal allegation to the state. Every clause footnoted, every dirty trick exposed. I forwarded it everywhere. County, HOA, Marin. The HOA tried to shut us out, but it was too late. Mira copied the local news desk. By that afternoon, a new notice was taped to our door. Community-level action may result. It was a tantrum, not a threat. That evening, Marin showed up. No clipboard, just jeans and a sweatshirt, hands shaking as she handed over a USB drive. Everything the board's hidden, internal memos, unfiled drafts. I waited until you made the first strike. She didn't come in. If they see my car, it's over. She walked away before I could thank her. Upstairs, Elaine was sitting up for the first time in days. You think it's gonna get ugly? She asked. It already has. On the USB, drafts, memos, a document titled Revised Aesthetic Enforcement. Regina's words. A place where wellness is implied, not displayed. Informal policy. Discourage visibility of medical devices. Recovery where anything that might impact property perception. That line alone could sink her. Jasper, my neighbor in Tech Whiz, traced the document. It was written on Regina's MacBook, edited by Timothy Willis, the HOA admin, who had written, "No need to file. Internal standard." This was a cover-up. That week, the neighborhood group chat blew up. Someone leaked Regina's line about wellness implied, not displayed. Neighbors shared photos, wheelchair ramps, oxygen tanks, violation letters for porch use during chemo. By midnight, people were sharing pictures of Elaine's chair. This is what healing looks like. The community started to speak for us. Regina tried to regain control, emergency meetings, more threats. But the evidence was everywhere. I printed copies, metadata, Georgia HOA legal code, the photo of Elaine on the porch, face turned to the sun. At the next meeting, I passed them out, stood at the podium, and laid it out. Clause 8.3b, Provision 11.4, all unfiled, never ratified. Regina tried to bluster. Timothy broke, admitted the clause was never filed. Marin stood up, voice steady. There was no vote, no quorum. It was illegal. Neighbors told their stories. A mother whose daughter stopped visiting, an old couple cited for a walker ramp, a nurse's granddaughter with a feeding pump. Each story peeled away Regina's myth. Elaine came in, slow and deliberate, sat in her chair in the middle of the room. Silence fell like a curtain. Someone clapped. Others followed. By the end, half the room had walked out, leaving Regina speechless. 2 days later, a letter came from the state HOA office. Clause 8.3b, unenforceable. Provision 11.4, null and void. All fines reversed. Any future enforcement subject to legal review. Timothy resigned. Marin became interim president. Her first act, draft a transparency policy protecting recovery and disability accommodations. Elaine read the apology letter, tucked it into her chair's side pocket like it belonged there. That weekend, we held a small gathering. Just neighbors, just stories, just lemonade and lemon bars and folding chairs. The recliner sat in the middle, no one dared move it. Healing isn't a spectacle, it's a right. And if you've been through something like this, if you've ever been bullied by an HOA, treated like a problem for being sick or recovering, know this, you're not alone. We built a precedent. If you're still fighting, drop your story in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And subscribe, because this battle isn't over. Not by a long shot.